Gospel according to St. Luke, the 23rd chapter. Glory to you, Lord. But the crowd all cried out together, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas," a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed the crowd once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they shouted out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" The third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no crime deserving death. I will therefore chastise him and release him." But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, whom they asked for, but Jesus he delivered up to their will. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of the people and of women who bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning to them, said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never gave suck.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the word is grieved, what will happen when it is dry?" Two others also, who were criminals, were led away and put to death with him. And when they came to the place which is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And they cast lots to divide his garments, and the people stood by watching. But the rulers scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him vinegar, and saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who was hanged railed at him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation, and we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." And he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingly power." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And all the multitudes who assembled to see the sight when they saw what had taken place returned home, beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance and saw these things. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Be seated. What you will hear today is is a sermon written by Gerhardt Forde, a preacher and professor of systematic theology at Luther Seminary, a favorite professor of mine who understood the radical nature of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Presenting this sermon continues in the tradition established by Luther, in which preachers accomplished in theology circulated sermons called postiles for those parish pastors to use. This was published in 2004 and is contained in the book The More Radical Gospel. So hear now the gospel of Jesus Christ as preached by Gerhardt Forde. Jesus died for you. This is really all he did in the days of his flesh. That is truly for you. In the end, that is all he could do. He died. He refused to do anything else. I am the good shepherd, he said. And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So his mission was, finally, to die. And it was for you. This has to be said so bluntly because too often we are tempted to think he was really doing something else, something that might have more meaning or be profoundly religious. We look at Jesus' death on the cross and we puzzle about it. We ask, I wonder what it means. How could the death of Jesus be for us today? After all, it happened a long time ago. Especially when reading the Bible, we can think we can answer such questions by discovering deep and eternal meanings behind the scenes that will reach through time and touch us today. Perhaps the meaning is that Jesus is paying God or Satan. Or perhaps it is the offer of an exemplary, heroic death for us to admire. So through the years, we have tried to answer questions about how Jesus' death could be for us by means of our doctrines of atonement. The most persistent theme, the one that has seemed the most natural and logical to us, has been the idea that Jesus was for you because he is our substitute. Jesus does what we ought to do but can't due to sin. We don't have enough capital to pay the debt. So our doctrine of atonement will say that Jesus becomes our substitute and pays a wrathful God what we owe. And since Jesus is not only man, but also the eternal Son of God, this payment is good for all time. But such doctrinal explanations seem always to lead us into other puzzling problems. Questions arise that we have difficulty answering. In the first place, the idea that God is paid by the death of Jesus holds us in a false relation to God. It puts our relation on much too commercial a basis. Is God one who can be paid off, even by the death of Jesus? Furthermore, if God is paid, how can we say that God is merciful? Mercy is mercy.